what's up? This is Logan Mize, and you are listening to TNCRadio.live.
And welcome in TNC Radio.live. This is Building Strong Minds. We're live on Monday, May the 15th, 2023. And we've got Dr. Christopher Cortman with us, along with Lisa and Candace, who are joining us this month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, Suicide Prevention Month, and Chocolate Chip Cookie Day. I don't know why, but it is technically Chocolate Chip Cookie Day, so I thought I'd throw that in there too. So happy to have you all in here with us today. I'm Tom Kelly, and we've had the opportunity to have Lisa and Candace on with us for the last couple of weeks, and again with us this week and next. Let's talk tonight. We said, we're based on where we left off last time, that we're going to spend some time tonight talking about trauma and some of its long-term effects that it can have on us. But before we jump in there, let's say hello to everybody. First of all, Dr. Chris, how are you this evening?
I tell you what, I can't get past the chocolate chip cookie part of the day. That's all I want to talk about. And then I want to do a field trip and experience it.
Yeah.
But if you guys want to talk about trauma, okay.
Well, yeah, I hear you. Do you agree that Nestle Toll House are the best chocolate chip cookies?
Oh, wow. Delicious.
Absolutely the best. And how about for you, Lisa? Do you have a good chocolate chip cookie recipe?
I do. It's called those little pre-made ones you buy and throw in the oven, and they take about 10 minutes to cook.
The ones that are in the brick? Yeah, you break up the squares? Oh, my gosh.
Yep.
Those are perfect.
That's what I do.
That's the best recipe of all. And Candace, how about for you? Are you a chocolate chip cookie fan?
Well, you see, I'm a chocolate chip cookie dough fan, so I like it to not even be cooked.
Okay.
But if I had to pick my favorite, I think, when you go into the little convenience stores, those grandma
Oh, yeah, grandmas are good.
Cookies?
Yeah,
those are really good.
Yeah, they are good. So chocolate chip cookies were a big deal in my house growing up, so much so that I once asked my mother for my birthday, could I please have the world's biggest chocolate chip cookie, which she obliged. She made an entire batch of cookies and then made one that kind of fit through this pan that she had and everything, and that kind of became the family thing that, at birthday time you would get you a big chocolate chip cookie. Yeah. Chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk. I'm sorry, just not much better in the comfort food field than that.
No,
if you don't hear any
better.
I'm sorry?
I was saying it don't get no better than a warm cookie and a cold glass of milk.
That's right.
Oh, sure. I was going to say, if you don't hear another word from me, that's because I left and went to the store. So.
Well, you gotta stick it out with us for just a few more minutes, because we want to talk about keeping pain in the past. Dr. Cortman has written a number of different books, and one of them is called Keep Pain in the Past, Getting Over Trauma, Grief, and the Worst Thing That's Ever Happened to You. And I want to begin, before we kind of jump into some details and that kind of stuff, with one of the primary things that you need to understand if you're going to read Dr. Cortman's work, if you're going to spend time talking to him and everything else. There's one truth that you're going to need to accept right up front, and that is that throughout your entire life, you've been told this lie. And the lie goes like this: well, time heals all wounds. That's just simply not true. Time heals absolutely nothing. Tell us your thoughts there, Dr. Chris.
Time passes. That's what time does. And it is given a lot of credit for helping people to heal because two things that occur together are associated. And in psychology, that's called the law of association. We do heal very often over time, not because time did the healing work, but because while time was passing, we were able to let go of whatever we needed to let go of. There are many people, though, over that same period of time who don't heal because they use their time differently. And in fact, sometimes people will rehearse their injuries. They will stew in their betrayal, their rejection, their abandonment, whatever the perceived crime was. And instead of time healing, they become worse over time because they use their time only to strengthen or reinforce their emotional wounds instead of allowing them to, letting them go, as it were.
And through the process, one of the things that we've talked about is that if you were to, say, get a really nasty cut on your leg and were to say, well, you know what, I'm not going to worry about this really horrible cut that's on my leg because, after all, time heals all wounds. Lisa, what do you think would happen to your leg after a week or two?
Well, it would probably fester and get worse.
Yeah. And even though, maybe at some point your body gets so sick of it that, the body can do some things to reduce pain, by inducing fever and killing nerve cells and, those kinds of things. It might hurt a little bit less, but it wouldn't mean that the issue has gone away. And that's kind of the same approach as we talk about things that involve tragedy that has happened within our lives. So I'm going to, because every time I say, who should I pick on first, Lisa immediately says Candace. So I'm going to pick on Candace first. Candace, just out of curiosity, have you ever had anything go bad in life, be a little traumatic?
A lot.
What?
And I think anyone would be lying if they said no, because I feel like, I feel like everyone always has something bad happen in life.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's one of the quotes I was just looking at a little while ago. Zig Ziglar, who, have we ever talked about Zig Ziglar, Dr. Chris?
No, I don't think so.
Are you familiar with Zig Ziglar?
Yeah, I know who he is, yeah.
One of the things that he says that I think is terribly true is that if you treat everybody you come across as somebody who has endured a lot and been through great pain, you're probably right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're right, Candace. I think a lot of us have faced great pain. So to kind of move us through this discussion this evening, what I'd like for us to do is we're coming up on a hard break here in just a moment. But when we come back from that, let's dig in a little bit. And we're not going to do professional therapy and all that kind of stuff, but I want to give the listener a sense of what do you do with this stuff? Because I think you're right, Candace. I think every single driver out there right now is taking a moment to recall the worst thing that ever happened to them. And some of them have that in a good place, and some of them have that in a bad place. And some of them want to turn off the radio now because they don't want to think about the worst thing that ever happened to them.
Right.
But the truth of it is, there's help out there, isn't there, Dr. Chris?
Well, I sure hope so. And it doesn't have to be very complicated. It just has to be brave enough to face what people need to face.
There you go. So we're going to talk about all of that. And no, we're not going to make Lisa and Candace cry and tell us about the worst thing that ever happened to us or to them. Or maybe we will. I don't know. We'll talk about that during the break.
Seriously, Tom?
Y'all haven't cried on the air yet with us, have you?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe.
But you know the old saying my dad used to tell me, cowgirls don't cry. We don't cry. Well, we do, but I was raised in a family that did not ever shed a tear.
Let's make them cry, and then we'll do a show on bullying afterwards.
Okay, yeah, I like this. We're on to something. We're going to take a break. We'll be back here in just a minute. You're listening to TNC Radio.live on a Monday night. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay right there.
For the latest in Houston traffic, weather, news, and information, don't miss the Evening Surge, weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. on TNCRadio.live.
Hi, I'm Shelley Johnson with TNCRadio.live. You know me for the Truckers Network radio show and Women Road Warriors that I co-host with Kathy DeCaro. We know that life as a driver is not easy. Do you believe in the power of prayer? Whether you're moving down the highway or taking a break, you can take a moment right now to tell God about your hopes, concerns, and gratitude. Do you want someone to pray with? No problem. Just call the TFC Global 24-hour prayer line. It's 866-515-9406. That's 866-515-9406. Or if you're using the TNC Radio.live app, just press the prayer line button to be connected to a prayer warrior who will confidentially pray with you and for you. Thank you, and God bless.
And welcome back in TNC Radio.live. That was a short break. I guess I put one in here earlier than I thought I did. But anyway, hey, welcome back in. I'm Tom Kelly. We're here with Dr. Christopher Cortman, Building Strong Minds. And with us, we have Lisa and Candace. They've been with us for the last couple of weeks. You can hear their new show on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, right here on TNCRadio.live. And you can find them out on TikTok. We'll give you more instruction about that a little bit later. But we want to keep talking about this concept of dealing with the things that have happened to you in your life. And now I don't remember who said it. Was it Lisa? You jokingly made a suggestion earlier. What was that?
What, alcohol, Xanax and alcohol?
Xanax and alcohol, which is funny because actually, Dr. Chris and I have talked about that Xanax and alcohol are actually a great way to deal with the trauma of your life, at least as far as they do work. Now, what it does to the rest of your body and the rest of your relationships and all that kind of stuff, that's a different question. But the thing is that if Xanax and alcohol taken in large amounts didn't help, people wouldn't do it.
Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah, you could do the Xanax and alcohol thing. And I think we all know, all four of us, and probably most listeners, know of at least somebody who is basically getting through life on Xanax and alcohol.
Well, some days. No.
Definitely.
No, I mean, we through some, at some point we've known somebody who you think, wow, I don't know what happened to them, but that's how they're surviving life, is that they spend most of their life in some kind of altered state.
It's me, Tom. It's me. I'm the one.
I know quite a few.
It was me for a long time. I killed my pain with Xanax and alcohol and other mood altering drugs.
Yeah. So, Dr.
16 until I was 24.
So, Dr. Chris, I'll let you jump in. You think there are better things to do than Xanax and alcohol?
Probably not. I think they work just magically. It's funny. We all have things that we would call our drug of choice. You were talking about mine before. You mentioned things like chocolate chip cookies. I would take that over alcohol or Xanax or any drugs because I've always enjoyed food and sweets and I can deal with emotional issues by burying them, as it were, rather than drowning them. I can eat when I'm upset. But there's so many different ways that people can mask their emotions, that they can hide their trauma from themselves, and alcohol and benzodiazepines like Xanax, like Ativan, those kind of Valium, those kinds of things. They wouldn't be abused if they didn't work. There's no black market for antidepressants because nobody gets high from them. Nobody has to, in order to get the necessary effect, you have to take them every day around the same time for, at least 2 to 4 weeks, and hopefully you feel better, but you don't get a buzz, you don't get a high, and they don't, people don't abuse them. So, we do what we have to do, or we do what works because we want to kind of numb the effects of something stressful on our minds and bodies, and certainly something traumatic. And we've all had difficult experiences, but a real trauma has a way of rocking someone's life, and it kind of changes everything that's about to happen in their lives, because the trauma can be just so overpowering, overwhelming. Sound like you want to say something.
Do you think it's something that might be traumatic to one person might not be traumatic to something else, and everyone handles that trauma differently?
Well, you ask a question, but you already know the answer to your question, because you've known people to go through the same or similar things, and one person is just blown away by it, and somebody else, it's not that big a deal.
Exactly.
And, here you don't have to look any further than Hurricane Ian that we just experienced in late September of 2022. I mean, there were people in the same town, on the same block. Some have PTSD now because of what they went through. And others, it was like, man, that was quite a storm, but they haven't lost a night's sleep because of it. Everything, that was knocked down has been repaired. And, it wasn't a trauma to them. It was a bad storm. It didn't, they're not going to spend a single session on my couch because of that hurricane. You know what I mean?
So, with that in mind, do you feel like, let's see, I'll go back to Candace here. Do you feel like that you have unresolved trauma in your past?
I don't think that I have unresolved trauma, because I have learned better ways to cope with them. But for about 14 years, I would definitely say that I did have it, until I learned better ways of coping with them, or handling it, I guess. I went through a very nasty relationship, and I used different substances. Like, I started with oxycodones, and then, that quit working, and I went to Stronger. And I felt like it was kind of an escape, because I didn't want to deal with the pain. So I found something that for a short time eased the pain. And then I spiraled way out of control.
Very interesting. And when you say spiraling way out of control, what does that look like?
I would get paid on Friday. I would, find my high for that week, and then I would spend literally every dime in a bar, and by Saturday morning my whole paycheck was gone. I didn't care about bills. I didn't care about anything as long as I had that high to numb all of the pain.
Wow.
And I think it was because I didn't want to handle it at that point, because I knew I was still in that situation and I hadn't left it, and I knew it wasn't going to get better, but I had to find a way that I could kind of blanket the pain, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I did anything and everything that I could to blanket that pain.
So, Dr. Chris, when you have a patient come in, do you like to call them patients or clients?
Yeah, both. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
To me, it doesn't. Yeah.
So you have a patient come in who reports that much. Where does one even begin on something like this?
Well, it's a great question. For me, I always want to make sure of a couple of things first. First of all, is that the patient feels safe and connected with me, that they believe that this is an okay place to deal with whatever is unfinished, if you will. And the second thing is that I want them to know that I understand where they're coming from. Like, I totally get it. I have to get it. And then when they feel safe because they know they can trust me, and safe because I understand, then it's just a question of, let's take me to the pain. When are you ready to take me to whatever it is that you need to deal with? Whatever it is that either you've been burying for, 2 weeks since he broke up with you, or some of these phenomenal stories of horrible things that happened 50, 60, 70 years ago that people have never dealt with. What is it that you have not laid to rest? What have you not finished, perfected, made peace with, forgiven, accepted? There's all kinds of terms and phrases that essentially mean I'm okay with that. It doesn't hurt anymore. I've released it. I've said goodbye to it. I've championed it. That's what I look for. That's why I'm still doing this after 80,000 hours of it. It's not to hear the ugly, painful stories. I'm living. Speaking of the high, my high is to see somebody put that stuff away, to finally say, well, that's done. And I could go on without carrying that, or without that dominating my day or my life or my relationship or whatever it is they're doing. I finally laid that to rest. And, we could talk about trauma, but in that same ballpark is grief. Sometimes it's not just I was traumatized by, a rape or being molested or a storm or, an abduction or something. But sometimes it's just grief where I'm devastated by the loss of the dog, the grandfather, the child, the teenager, the spouse. And I have to make peace with that loss. I have to somehow put that person in a place where I have some peace again, and I'm okay about going on with my life.
Is that possible?
It's absolutely possible. And, if it weren't possible, I wouldn't be seeing all these people for grief. But it's one of the most common of all presenting reasons for treatment as somebody lost someone dear to them, even if it's a breakup of a relationship. But the grief of loss, it's absolutely possible to make peace with that and to say goodbye to someone, to move forward with life. Not all of us are going to meet somebody in junior high and enjoy a 73-year marriage together until death do us part. There are a lot of losses along the way.
Yep.
In fact, for most people, thousands of them along the way. I don't mean it with significant others. I mean all kinds of losses along the way. And we have to learn to grieve.
Which is something that does not get taught well in many families throughout the Western world anyway. We don't tend to know how to grieve well. So, well, I tell you what, we've got a lot to cover here between tonight and next week. So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back in just a few minutes and talk about how one even begins the process. So we'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to TNC Radio Live. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay right there.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. You know, after 36 years of being licensed as a psychologist, I've figured that the number one thing that people do when they're upset is avoid. Humans are infamous for avoiding things, and they avoid anything that's unpleasant or uncomfortable. You could see this from the very beginning of life all the way to the end of life. For instance, if you took a newborn baby and you blow in the baby's face, the baby will blink and the baby will turn her little head. I know because I tried this. I'm blowing in the child, and I'm saying this is for science. But she would blink and turn her head because it's unpleasant. So she tried to avoid it. Likewise, you can take an elderly man on the last day of his life and bring him into a room, and he'll complain that it's cold. He might want to leave the room, or he might want a sweater, because humans will do what they can to avoid discomfort. Okay, so now that we know that, what do we do with avoidance? There's a simple rule that says face everything that's uncomfortable to you, especially if it's going to bring about growth. Now that's easier said than done, but this is where it's important to have support and partnership and encouragement, and to make goals and to make steps to get to the goals. But the bottom line is it's important to face and not avoid, because that's how we succeed and that's how we grow.
You're listening to TNC Radio.live. Remember to tune into the Truckers Network Show with Shelley Johnson, weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Welcome back, TNC Radio.live. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. All right, so Lisa, Candace, who's going to step up here? You had a question for Dr. Cortman.
So, you know, we were talking during the break a little bit about truck drivers not being able to do therapy, not thinking they need it. And is that kind of like how they were raised? I know my husband does not show emotions. Very, very hard to get any emotions out of my husband. And I was raised in a family that doesn't show emotions either. So how do you go about that?
Well, you asked a couple of questions there, and they're both good. First of all, you asked if that's a behavior learned in certain families. And the answer to that, of course, is yes, but it's also the way we've cultured and raised our males. If you look to the left and the right of our eyes, you'll see in males, we also have tear ducts. And we know we can cry, but we're not allowed to cry. And we were taught not to cry because if we ever did as a boy, we were a sissy and we were humiliated. And, that was shut down very quickly. I remember Howard Karansky crying because his book cover wasn't fitting properly in third grade. And I was humiliated for him. Like, what? You're already 8 years old and you're crying over this? And it's funny to me thinking that was just so out of place at that early time in life that no matter what they were going to do to us, we couldn't cry. We shouldn't cry. It's weakness. Now we understand that people who cry actually live longer. We understand that there's research that says that emotional tears have a different biochemical composition than tears that are used to clean debris from our eyes, and that the tears that are emotional actually serve to reduce our stress levels just by crying. People feel a lot better in therapy when they start to cry. I mean, I love it when really anybody, but especially a male, is reduced to tears and starts using up my Kleenex because I know we've hit pay dirt, and it's the feeling and expressing and releasing of emotion that can lead to cure, to peace and relief that I was alluding to earlier. So, to take half the population and say you may not cry when it's actually true that by crying about something, when you're talking about it, it's actually very often the ticket to finally making peace with it. It's astounding. And yet very little is being done to change that acculturation of males in our society. But we should be explaining to kids and people of all ages how humans heal from emotional pain and trauma.
So how do you handle it when a husband and wife are both the same way? I was taught, that's how I was raised. Rub some dirt on it. Cowgirls don't cry. Get over it. It'll be fine. And my husband's kind of the same way. So how does that work?
Well, first of all, I would say if it's working, don't mess with anything that's working. It's when it's not working. And if, for instance, you are wounded about something in your life and it's not getting better, as Tom was alluding to, time's passing and I'm as resentful or worse than I was a year ago, it's probably time to go in and talk to somebody about it. And, in my experience, it makes a difference if the clinician really has an understanding of what is healing or how do we get there. It's not, a lot of clinicians don't really understand, in my opinion, what it is that actually brings on healing. There are people who cry themselves to sleep every night, and you would say, well, where is the power of tears if every night this person cries themselves to sleep? There's a big difference there. What they're doing is what shall we say? They're bathing themselves in self-pity. They're not releasing anything. They're just wallowing, as it were, in how awful it is that she left, or what hurts so bad, or what's not fair, or what was completely toxic in that situation. And of course, people can be stuck in holding on to things that were never fair or right, because to release it to them feels like they're condoning something bad that happened. I can't let it go, then he got away with it. I can't release it because it means that no justice will ever be served. So, with healing, it's very important that we give ourselves permission to return to whatever it is that's unfinished. We don't get better by dancing around something. We don't get better by not talking about it or by saying, Vietnam is off limits, or what happened there stays there. We're not going to, you have a bad car accident or something, you saw death. If you come in to see me at some point, I'm going to say, we got to go there. We need to deal with whatever it is that is unfinished. How do you know something's unfinished? Because it haunts you, because it owns you, because it's painful to talk about, because you'll do anything to avoid it, because it makes you feel sad or enraged just by thinking about it, because it invades your sleep, because you may have flashbacks or intrusive recollections, meaning that you're doing something else and it just keeps popping back into your head. All indications that you're not finished with it. Tom has heard me say more than once in the last year or so that I see the mind as being somewhat like the stomach, kind of analogous to the stomach in the sense of whatever has not been digested may very well repeat on you. The stomach can only do 8-10 hours, whereas the mind can do an entire lifetime of something that hasn't been digested, and it will keep on haunting you, repeating on you, returning to you because it has not satisfactorily been digested or put away. And so I'll say to people, go ahead.
I have one more question, and just because I'm thinking about it. Is it true that, so my ex was horrible. I mean, horrible. He tried to kill me 3 times. He failed 3 times. But people say that until I forgive him, I can never let that anger go out of what I have for him. I can't start healing myself until I forgive him for what he did.
That's really a great question. Thank you for being brave enough to ask it on the air. And if you don't mind, I'll just ask you, as a result of being attacked like that, it sounds kind of brutally attacked, if he tried to kill you 3 times, what is it that's left over? What's still there for you? For instance, are you still dreaming about that? Do you think about that all the time? When you think of him, do you feel rage? Where are you with what he did?
Well, I do. I mean, I've been with my husband now for 25 years. So this was before I met my husband. I do feel angry for the things that he did. I do, I feel angry for the actions that he took, but I think I feel angry at myself because I continued to take him back after the first time, after the second time. It wasn't until the 3rd time when he literally threw me through a glass window that I laid on the ground and thought, I can't do this anymore. So I'm always angry about that. I dream about it. I do get angry when I think about it.
So the biggest leftover for you is anger towards yourself for wasting time with him. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm angry, but I went through abuse counseling. I've went to treatment. I've done everything I needed to do, and it wasn't until I met my husband when I thought, wow, this is what a healthy relationship looks like, because I had no idea what a healthy relationship looked like because I had never been in a healthy relationship. So I kind of sabotaged my marriage when we first got married because I kept waiting for that other shoe to fall.
This is such a great story. And again, thank you for having the courage to talk about it on live radio. It's a great story to me for a number of reasons. And I'm, this is all live for me, so I'm going to spew these up as they're in my head. The first reason is it's absolutely a story of success because I'm going to borrow from the great philosopher Steve Miller, who said, you have to go through hell before you get to heaven, big old jet airliner, etc. Anyway, some of us have to pay dues by going through very difficult things, and we have to go through things more than once. I mean, if you saw some of the research on how often it takes somebody to leave an abusive partner, it could be 7 or 8 times on average. That means there are outliers out there who it'll be 14 times they leave and they go back and they go back and they go back. And how many times for some people to quit smoking before it's finally done? To borrow the quote from the great Mark Twain, he says, quitting smoking is easy. I've done it hundreds of times. You know, we have to sometimes go through things a lot longer than we think is reasonable, or we like to say, how stupid am I? You know, I could go into my personal life and say, boy, did I do some things really poorly. Wasn't I stupid? Wasn't I dumb? And I was, except that I needed to do what I needed to do to finally get to a better place. And so I want to tell you that if you're not in that relationship anymore, you're in a relationship 25 years with a good man and a good marriage. That's a success. And you had to pay dues to get to that point. Now, you're not going to be abused anymore for 2 reasons. Number one, you would disallow it. And number 2, you found a guy that's not his MO. That's not his style. Excuse me. He's not inclined to, to be violent or abusive in that manner. So this is a great story. So at some point, what you owe yourself is to take that energy that you're using to be self-abusive and to reinvest that energy into positive things. For instance, what? Well, here's a couple off the top of my head. One is to be involved in some kind of pro-women's group to help to tell your story of what it took for you. Because every time you tell a story like that, not only does it make you stronger, it plants seeds in other women. They have to hear these things from others, and you feel stupid about your own story. And then you hear someone else who said it took 3 times he attempted to murder me and I had to be laying on the ground, having gone through a glass wall, saying, you know what? This is not a good idea to stay in. I should be considering other options at this point.
Yeah.
That's empowering to other people. You can use that energy instead of hating you, instead of shaming self, to minister to others. Another thing is you could use that energy to reinvest it in the marriage that you have and celebrate how fantastic it is to have a partner like you, because I know otherwise. I know what it's like to be hurt. I know what it's like to be abused. I know what it's like to feel fear. I know what it's like to feel sadness. With you, I feel safe. With you, I feel connected. With you, I feel cherished. I feel like a priority. And I want to invest all that I have in this relationship as long as the good Lord gives us time together, because I don't want to look back and say, what a great guy, and I didn't cash it all in. I didn't give the best that I could give because I played a game where I only, the hokey pokey kind of thing. I only put 1 foot in and I took the 1 foot out. I need to invest as much as I have because I found the guy. A quarter of a century later, I want to be able to give what I have in this relationship. So that's just a couple of thoughts on how your energy, one of my 10 truths, Tom was alluding to the 10th one, that time doesn't heal. Healing is an active process. But another one of those is that we're finite beings and we only have so much emotional energy in the course of a day. And if I'm using my energy to resent, to regret, to hate, to be stuck in the past, it's like spending money that I'll never get back. I'd rather reinvest that money into good relationships rather than continuing to review my perceived failures in the past. I hope that makes sense. I vomited an awful lot out in 5 minutes.
It does.
All right. Hey, well, I tell you what, let's do this. Let's take a quick break and come back and chat a little bit more before we get to the top of the hour right here on TNC Radio.live. Stay right there.
On TNCRadio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 4 things to consider before becoming a hazmat tanker driver. The demand for truck drivers is higher than ever. There are many different types of truck driving jobs. Whether you're a new driver or if you already have a couple of years' experience, it's never a bad idea to get new skills and endorsements. Hazmat tanker jobs are one of the many truck driving jobs. If you're considering becoming a hazmat tanker truck driver, here's some things you should know. What is a hazmat tanker? Hazmat truck drivers haul, deliver, and dispose of hazardous materials. Hazardous material can include things like gases, explosives, corrosive chemicals, poisons, and radioactive materials. Hazmat tanker drivers are not limited to hauling only hazardous material. They can also drive a non-hazardous tanker. Have the right requirements. Becoming a certified hazmat tanker driver will require you to add specific endorsements to your already existing CDL. You'll have to undergo training that is specifically designed for transporting and handling hazardous materials. After obtaining your CDL, you'll have to go through a background check and complete the application requirements. The application requires ID proof of being at least 21 years old, proof of citizenship or legal residence, a medical exam and eye exam. You must pass the hazmat knowledge test too. It's more stressful. Regardless of what you're hauling, being a truck driver is a stressful job. Safety is a top priority for truck drivers, especially for hazmat tanker drivers. Hauling hazardous material means that accidents or spills are much more severe. Hazmat tanker drivers are under much more stress and caution than drivers that haul non-hazardous material. Drivers need to be extra careful and need to plan their routes before driving. It requires a lot of skill. Truck driving is a difficult career and it's not for everyone. Being a truck driver already requires a lot of skill. For hazmat tanker drivers, there are specific skills that you'll need in order to be successful. Aside from the technical skills, hazmat tankers should also have personal skills. Some personal skills include being punctual, detail-oriented, and patient. These skills will make you a better driver in the long run. You make more money. Hazmat tanker drivers make more money on average. This is because more experience and skills required to haul hazardous loads. According to Salary.com, the average salary for a hazmat tanker driver in the United States is just over $63,000 a year, but the average salary range falls between $55,000 and $72,000 a year. Salary varies from education, certification, experiences, and additional skills. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is boosting the image of the industry by telling the story of trucking, and your story can be part of it. Upload a photo, tell us what you love about trucking, or send us a story about a good deed or charitable act in trucking. Be sure to follow us on social media and contact us through truckingmovesamerica.com. That's truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back in TNC Radio.live. Here we are. Been talking about a lot of stuff, and Lisa, you've shared some stuff both on and off the air. Yes?
Yes.
And so you kind of piqued a question for me, and while this is, let's talk practically for just a moment. Lisa, when is it time, in your opinion, to extricate yourself from a domestic violence situation?
I think every woman's different. We hear so much that they're abusive, and then we hear out of their mouths, I'm going to change. I'm going to do better. I'm never going to do it again. And I think, I had it done twice, But the third time, and I think Candace was speaking of this also, the third time when my ex threw me through a window, I was 6 months pregnant. And it wasn't just me that I was worrying about. It was also my child. And that's when I finally said, I absolutely cannot do this anymore. I don't care if Jesus comes back and touches his head and says he's cured. I can't take that chance because I'm not only worrying about myself, I'm worried about my child also.
Gotcha. And that makes sense. Dr. Chris, you know, we talked a little bit before the break about people being very slow to get themselves out of bad situations at times for a lot of different reasons. Any word of guidance? We've only got a couple of minutes here left. You know what? I tell you what. I'm gonna pull back that question because I don't think there's a way to answer that question in 1 or 2 minutes. Let's hold that for next time because I think it's something worth considering. On why do we stay in bad situations? And it doesn't just have to be a physically abusive situation. I think a lot of us stay in situations at work. I know of drivers who I'm quite familiar with. They quite frankly are working for a company that I think is not much different than one of the horrible companies from back in the sweatshop days of the in London back in the 1600s and all, where they have figured out a way to continue to abuse their employees and they don't leave. So I want to talk about when is it time to get out of a bad situation? How do you recognize that, not just at home but at work and everything? And what do you need to do that? Because that's not always an easy. Once you made the decision, even, it's not easy to do it. So we'll talk about that more in the future. Before we wrap things up, though, I want to talk about Dr. Chris. You've written multiple books, and those books are available on Amazon. And tell us about a couple of the books that you've written.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for the compliment that you think I could hold my tongue for 168 straight hours on this topic. So I'll do my best and not comment on that. But books, yeah. The book that's most relevant for tonight's talk is the book that you brought up earlier. And that has to do with trauma and helping people get over the worst thing that ever happened to them. And that's called Keep Pain in the Past. The premise of the book is you have some terrible things that have happened to you. You know you're not finished with them because they still hurt. They're still haunting you. And there is help and there is hope available that we really can put away something awful, something terrible that we've been carrying for many years. And if there's one thing I wish I had done a little bit better in the book is to say at the very beginning, don't read this thing if it's like a roller coaster ride. If you're pregnant or you have a bad back or something, don't get on this ride. Like if you're very delicate, if you're going to be shocked by bad stories, maybe this book isn't for you. Or maybe it is, because all of these people I'm writing about got better, despite the fact that these stories are just terrible, horrible stories. Like the reason to write a book like that, Tom, is to say, isn't this an awful story? Oh, sorry, I had to tell it, but here's the good news. That guy's doing well. This lady said to me the last time I talked to her, oh, I'm done with that. That's fine. That's over. I'm beyond that. I'm not here for that anymore. I'm here because my husband has MS. I need some coping tools before I kill him. So I share a book like that as kind of a story of victory. But I want to say that it's upsetting to people. It's scary. It hurts. It's traumatizing to read terrible things. But it's a book of hope. It's not a book of horror. So I want to encourage people, if you don't have hope about getting past something terrible, that book could be for you.
Cool. All right, we've only got just a second, so I'll go to Lisa. Best way for people to find you guys on TikTok?
The best way to find us on TikTok is under 32 truckers a day.